Hey guys, instead of an intro, I need to plug something really quickly. So I had an idea the other day and I wanted to run it by you and put it out there to anybody who might be interested. As of right now, I'm going to plan on next Friday around 8 p.m. Central Standard Time to do a live stream on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, obviously it'll be on YouTube. The plan is have a live stream and read your embarrassing stories, your cringy ass shit that's happened to you or that you've done or said, or things that has gone on, or you have like whatever kind of story that's awkward, that's weird, that's embarrassing, that's cringy, or I want to read it on the live stream. Not like a huge book about it. Just give me a short paragraph or 2 paragraphs of something that happened. Give me the gist of it. I'll read it live and then vote at the end of the night on whose was the most embarrassing, what was the most cringy or awkward, whatever. And that person, whoever wins, will get a care package from me. Probably a sweatshirt, t-shirt, stickers, all kinds of other whatever, a hat too if you want. And yeah, just something different. I know it's not scary stories and I know it's not really on brand for what I do, but I figured it'd be something fun, something that I enjoy talking about because I do a lot of cringy, awkward shit all the time. And I have lots of stories of my own that I'll share. If you don't want your name to be said and you want to remain anonymous, just obviously tell me that in the email when you send me your story. And again, unless something changes, let's plan on next Friday night, a week from today, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'd love to see you there. Read your embarrassing story. And hopefully, maybe you just might win some clothes and a hat and some stickies. And yeah, this has gone on long enough. So let's get into the stories. I'm not the kind of person who chases chaos. I like schedules, clean bathrooms, defined plans. But my husband Barry's a little looser with things. He'd pack a bag the morning of a flight, if I let him. But he's always been respectful of my needs for order. That's what made this whole trip feel like such a slap. We weren't flying cross-country or off-grid camping. Literally just a 3-hour drive out of the city, a little town built around a couple of lakes and creeks. The kind of place you forget existed until you scroll past some kind of aerial drone shot on social media and think to yourself, yeah, I could use a long weekend. So we did it the right way. Barry picked the destination. I booked the place. One of those Airbnbs that looked a little too perfect. Bright white interior, Edison bulb lighting, and a fire pit in the backyard. It said it was walking distance to the river. Sounds good. I cross-checked the references, verified the host profile, and made sure the lockbox code had come through properly. The booking confirmation said it had been recently cleaned and was fully reset for our arrival. That was the last phrase they used, reset, like we were loading into some digital hotel room and didn't remember the last guest. The drive-in was easy, mostly 2-lane roads and flat farmland broken up by little clusters of trees. There were actual cows out there. We stopped at this diner around 15 minutes from the house and had soup and grilled cheese, like we were retirees, just to buy ourselves time until the official check-in window had arrived. When we finally pulled up into the neighborhood, it was a lot quieter than I expected it to be. No kids on bikes, nobody out mowing their lawn or washing their car, and the house itself sat at the far end of the cul-de-sac, boxed in by tall hedges and a rickety wooden fence in the backyard. The first thing that I noticed was the car, not the one we drove in with, but the other one parked at the curb. Sleek, silver, clearly newer than anything else on that street. The hood was dusted over though, and pine needles were stuck to the windshield like nobody had even bothered to move it in days. I remember saying, "Do you think somebody's still here?" Barry just shrugged and got out to stretch. I didn't like that. I don't shrug things off like that either. I'd triple check a locked door before bed if I heard a single creak from the HVAC. I pulled up the app and clicked through the reservation. Everything looked right. Dates, address, check-in instructions. I even had a backup email from the host with a note about the key being inside the lockbox. Still, I called customer service just to be sure, and after a brief hold, the woman on the line told me everything had been confirmed. The host had supposedly cleared the place out earlier in the week, and sometimes people just leave their cars behind if they get picked up. Barry was already halfway to the porch by the time I hung up my phone. The lockbox clicked open without any kind of fight. Inside was a single brass key, old school, a little tarnished around the ridges. Barry held it up like he just won a prize and then slipped it into the knob. The front door creaked inward, revealing a tastefully decorated living room, neutral tones, abstract wall art, and one of those fake fireplaces with glowing logs. It looked like it was designed to look clean, without any kind of personality. And at first glance, it did look exactly like the pictures I saw before. Still, I stepped in slowly. The air wasn't stale exactly, but it wasn't fresh either. Like somebody had opened up all the windows earlier in that day and then shut them again just before we arrived. Barry walked in, called out a friendly hello, like we were visiting old friends or something. Of course, there was no answer. Just the gentle hum of a ceiling fan and the faint click of a wall clock. We brought in our bags and cooler, moving room from room. Kitchen, dining area, guest room, and bathroom. It all looked fine. I kept waiting for something to jump out though. Clothes on the floor, dishes in the sink, a door that wouldn't open. But it was quiet. But there was just something about it, something gnawing at me. The staging felt far too perfect, like it had been reconstructed, not just cleaned. But I tried to shake the thought. Barry lugged the cooler into the kitchen while I wandered down the hallway. He called for me a minute later, voice sharp. Babe, you gotta see this. I came back and found him standing with the fridge door wide open. Inside, it wasn't empty, not even close. It was packed full. Milk, deli meat, a full vegetable crisper, beer, a wrapped cheesecake on the top shelf, and everything was fresh. I leaned in and checked the labels. Nothing was expired. Somebody had stocked this fridge within the last few days. "This isn't ours, is it?" Barry said, though of course I knew it wasn't. "Did you order groceries?" "No," I said. "And this isn't leftover from the guests. There's no way this stuff would still be good." I pulled out my phone and wrote to the backup Airbnb contact that I'd been given, the real-time guest liaison or whatever they called themselves. I told them about the fridge. 15 minutes later, I got a reply and said, "Oh no, thanks for letting us know. It was an honest mistake. Owner must have left it by accident. Home is definitely vacant though. You're all clear to settle in. Enjoy your stay." No apology, just that vague, breezy dismissal. Barry then cracked open a soda from the fridge because of course he would, and then went to get the bags from the car. I stayed behind and wandered to the bathroom. It was clean, like everything else. Queen bed made tight, suitcase stand folded in the corner, lamp on the nightstand. The adjoining bathroom was lit by one high-frosted window and smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. That's when I noticed the medicine bottles on the back of the toilet. 6 orange prescription containers lined up in a row. I stepped in and picked one up. Hydrocodone, 10 milligrams. But the name was smudged. The date was only a week old though. The others were similar, painkillers, anti-nausea, sleeping aids. Next to them sat a manila envelope thick with paperwork. I slid the top open and saw forms from a regional cancer center. Billing information, treatment plans, chemo schedules, home care notes, radiation prep. I flipped through, my gut turning tighter and tighter. These weren't old papers, they were active, ongoing. "Barry!" I called out. And that's when I heard him scream. It was short and panicked, not drawn out. A gut-level sound that ripped me away from the sink and then down the hall. I followed the sound to the master bedroom where Barry stood frozen just inside the doorway. I pushed past him and stopped cold. There was a body on the carpet. Male, adult, face down. The skin was gray-green and sloughing in places. The stench hit me like a wet rag. Not quite rot, but the early oily phase of decomposition. Metallic, sour, unmistakable. His fingers were curled like claws, arms stretched downward towards the door, as if he was trying to drag himself out. His clothes were damp with old sweat and waste. The back of his shirt was soaked through and stained with a deep maroon where he apparently had leaked out while lying there. One leg was twisted unnaturally beneath him, like it had just given out halfway through the crawl. Barry backed out of the room gagging, and I just stood there, staring, because the rest of it was falling into place in my head. The full fridge, the medicine, the car out front. The Airbnb confirmation that the host had cleared out the week prior. He didn't leave, I said aloud, now numb. He was always still here. Barry didn't answer me. He was halfway in the hallway now, bent over and dry heaving. I stepped in carefully and skirted around the mess on the floor, checked the dresser. It was still full of clothes, men's underwear, socks, folded t-shirts. The nightstand had a charger plugged in. His wallet was open next to a glass of water. I didn't touch it, but I could see his license through the little plastic flap. Same last name as the booking. This was the host, the guy who'd supposedly cleaned the house before we got there. Only he never finished. He died doing it. I turned and followed Barry back down the hall. He was already on the phone with the Airbnb again, pacing in the living room, trying to stay calm but quickly unraveling with every single breath. Yeah, we just found a body. No, a body. It's in the house you said was clean and empty. No, this isn't like the fridge. This is a man's corpse literally rotting in the back bedroom. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and just stared at the counter, willing my thoughts to line up. The fridge, the prescriptions, the car, the fact that somebody approved our stay without ever even physically checking the property. The fact that we've been dismissed twice by customer service people who clearly didn't verify a fucking thing. There was no malice or conspiracy, just negligence, the kind that gets people hurt. The police showed up maybe 30 minutes later, 2 cruisers, no lights or sirens. The first officer to enter took one breath inside the master bedroom, then doubled back with a hand over his nose. They asked us to step outside, so we stood by our car in the gravel drive, while a paramedic team suited up to examine the body. I think Barry smoked 3 cigarettes in a row and didn't speak the whole time. I just stood there holding my phone, staring at the unread messages piling up from the Airbnb rep, who suddenly had gone very quiet once the words police and dead body were mentioned to them. An older detective arrived not long after, lean and very deliberate, gray mustache and mirrored sunglasses. He spoke to me first. "Do you know the deceased, ma'am?" he asked me. "No," I said. "We were renting the place. He was supposed to be gone. The company told us the house had already been cleaned and the owner had vacated the property." He raised his eyebrow. "You ever been here before?" "No." "You touch anything?" I hesitated. "I moved some papers in the bedroom. They look like treatment forms for cancer." He made some kind of note, and I watched his team bring out the body in a zipped black bag, the outline barely resembling the man that we found face down on that carpet. The smell didn't disappear. It seemed to hang over the driveway like smoke itself, a smell that would soak into our clothes, into our luggage, and into our memories. They questioned Barry next, and his answers seemed to be shorter than mine, or clipped. They asked us to give a formal statement at the station, but they could also tell that we were shaken up, so they offered to let us go after taking photos of our IDs and then verifying a reservation. We left, and the detective said something strange before we did. We had no reports of this man missing, no wellness checks, nobody called. As far as anybody's concerned, he was still alive until you opened up that front door. I nodded but didn't say what I was thinking. He probably had nobody left to check on him. We drove to the nearest Super 8, about 15 minutes outside of town. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and vending machine coffee. Barry didn't say anything until we were lying in the stiff queen bed with the TV on mute, and our shoes still on. "What if we hadn't gone into that room?" he asked. "What if we just spent the weekend there, slept next door while he was rotting down the hall?" I didn't answer because I already knew. The next morning, I got an email from the Airbnb apologizing for the inconvenience. and assured me that the matter had been escalated to the safety response team. Our entire trip had been refunded. They even offered us a free future stay. I deleted that email without saying anything in response, and then quickly deleted the app. I flew out for a tech conference, but if I'm being honest, the real plan was to stretch it into a little coastal vacation. Conference stuff was 3 days long, but I took 6 off total, with the back half of the trip wide open. No meetings, no emails, just sun and some space. It was February in New York, and I was sick of stepping over black slush and dodging subway coughs. I needed a reset. The Airbnb was a modern bungalow just outside of LA, Venice adjacent, they called it. Little house tucked between bigger ones, right near the beach. Photos showed some hardwood floors, a full kitchen, sleek appliances, 1 queen bed, and a desk by a picture window. I figured it was the perfect base. I'd hit the panels and break out sessions, maybe network a little, then disappear into the boardwalk crowd and get a few drinks, talk to some women, hubba hubba, maybe take 1 or 2 back if the vibe was right. When I landed at LAX, everything ran smoothly. The Uber picked me up at the curbside. Nice driver, knew the shortcuts. The check-in instructions were detailed and easy. Lockbox by the side gate, code included in the app, key inside. I got in around 2 in the afternoon. The place looked just like the photos, clean, bright, and smelled like fresh paint and citrus. I unpacked right away because I always do that. Call it compulsive, but I like knowing where my stuff is. I had a roller bag and a backpack, both of which I emptied into drawers and closets within the next 10 minutes. My laptop and camera went on the desk. My wallet, keys, and conference badge landed on the kitchen counter. I noticed there was no other personal clutter, no toothbrushes, no coats hanging near the door, no signs that anybody lived here. But that's the way I like it. I mean, I'm renting the place, not borrowing somebody's house. Those next few days were pretty normal. I hit the conference early, came back late, slept like the dead. I took a few photos of the beach at sunset, even got a few compliments on my camera gear. But on the 3rd day, once the conference was almost over and my schedule loosened up, I started noticing these little things. Doors ajar that I already closed, stuff out of place. I quickly told myself that I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Something was not right in that house. I started with the bathroom door. I remember closing it after my shower, habitual, because I didn't want the steam to escape. I had some shirts hanging in there. But when I came back later that night to brush my teeth before bed, it was now standing wide open. Not halfway, not nudged open. Open, fully. I chalked it up to some kind of draft. The place did have a lot of windows, and I'd had the front one cracked earlier, so that had to be it. But then it was the bedroom closet, and I never used those things. It was too easy to forget things in a rush. Still, one morning after a walk on the beach, I came back and noticed that bifold door were pushed in slightly, like somebody had just slipped in to grab a jacket. I didn't even want it open at first. I just stared at it for a while, then slowly pulled the doors apart. Nothing inside, just my luggage, zipped up and right where I left it. But all of this had started to get in my head. That night, I found the peanut butter jar sitting out on the counter, lid open, spoon right next to it. I hadn't eaten any. I hadn't even touched the thing since I unloaded my groceries. And that's when I got the feeling. The one that you get when you know, not think, know somebody's been in your stuff. The next day, I took photos of everything before I left. Wide shots of every room, time-stamped as well. I even arranged a few things in deliberate ways. A folded dish towel on the oven handle. My charger coiled up just so on the nightstand. I went out for lunch and checked the photos when I got back. Sure enough, the towel was now different, sloppier. The charger was uncoiled and rewrapped in this totally different loop. The peanut butter jar was now in the pantry, not the fridge. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, and the silence was wrong. The kind of silence that waits to be broken. Not peaceful, but expectant. Like I wasn't supposed to be there, or maybe like I wasn't alone. That night I took a lot more drastic measures. I set my phone on the entry table and aimed it straight at the front door. I propped it against a stack of coasters, set it to record video, and made sure the battery was at 100%. Then I opened the app and ordered an Uber. I had no intention of going anywhere. I just needed to make it look like I had. When the driver pulled up, I walked out, locked the door, and climbed in. I asked him to take me around the block and then drop me back on Pacific Avenue. He didn't ask me any questions, and I tipped him extra and then waited until he turned the corner before looping back to the house on foot. My heart was racing. I cut through an alley and crouched behind a neighbor's hedge until I had a clear view of the street. There was a car in the driveway that had not been there before. Dark blue SUV, nondescript, no plates on the front. I took a photo of it just in case. I approached the house slowly. The front door was cracked open. I stood outside for a few seconds just listening. Then, I pushed it open and stepped inside. The first thing I heard was movement, soft, unhurried footsteps in the back of the house, then a cupboard opening. I stayed low and moved fast, following the sounds to the kitchen. A man stood there, rummaging through the fridge, middle-aged, wearing a plain white hoodie and jeans. His hair was thinning, face puffy, like he hadn't slept in a while. When he turned and saw me, he froze like I just hit him with a spotlight. Whoa, he said, hands half raised. You scared me, man. Who the fuck are you? I asked, not yelling, just flatly. I'm the owner, he said quickly. It's my house. No, it's not, I said. Not right now. I have a reservation through Sunday. Right, he said, nodding. I know, I left some stuff here. I figured while you were out, I didn't mean to scare you. Bullshit, I responded. You've been here the whole time. He stepped toward the door casual. Look, man, I didn't touch anything, all right? I was just grabbing a few things. Don't move, I said to him. My phone's been recording the door since I left. I saw your car. You've been coming and going. He hesitated, and I watched his face change. The mask slipped for a second. Not panic, but calculation. He realized that I wasn't buying his story. He also realized that I wasn't just going to let him leave. I pulled out my phone and hit the call button. Calling the cops. Hey, come on, he said, trying to sound calm. That's not necessary. I'm not dangerous, I swear. This is my place, man. I just thought I could come by while nobody was home. I didn't think you'd be back so soon. You went through my shit. He looked away. I'm missing $500 for my luggage, and I know it was in there. His hands tightened at his side. And if I go check right now, I said, am I gonna find my laptop in your bag? I didn't get an answer, just that faint buzz of tension in the air, like we were two wires pressed together, waiting to spark. He then dropped his head and muttered, Look, you don't need to call them. I'll give it back. I already called. He swore and spun around like he might bolt, but the front door was behind me now, and I'm not moving. A few minutes later, the cops showed up and I showed them the video of the phone, and the guy just stood there looking deflated. They went through his bag and found my laptop wrapped up in a sweatshirt, plus the small wad of cash. Some of the bills had my initials on the corner. I marked them on a whim when I packed. I travel a lot, and I have a lot of people try to steal from me before, so it's just something I do. The cops didn't cuff him, but they escorted him out and warned him not to return. They let me file a full statement. I watched his car disappear down the block, and it wasn't until it was completely out of sight that my hands finally started to shake. The cops told me he wasn't technically trespassing because he was the legal owner, and he hadn't used force to enter. It would take a formal complaint from Airbnb for charges to stick. But the officer nodded toward the recording on my phone and said, That'll definitely help. They're going to want to see that. I told them that I'd send it to whoever needed it. That night, because of everything, I didn't sleep much. I put pushed the chair under the doorknob like some old cartoon, kept the lights on in every room, and stacked my suitcase in front of the front bedroom window, just in case I heard glass breaking. I waited for the sound of tires on gravel, the glint of that blue SUV pulling back into view, but it never came. I called the Airbnb first thing in the morning, walked them through everything that took place. To their credit, they didn't fight on anything. The woman I spoke to sounded young but serious enough. She asked for the video, the photos of the car, and the copy of the police report, which I emailed over that afternoon. By the end of that day, I had a full refund. They also added credit to my account and sent a follow-up message saying the host had been permanently suspended. Apparently, this wasn't the first time they'd gotten complaints about him. We were already reviewing his activity, she told me. I'm really sorry it took something like this to push it over the line. So am I. I stayed that last night of the trip in a boutique hotel closer to downtown. It wasn't fancy, cramped room, barely enough space to turn around in the shower, but the key card worked and nobody crept through my kitchen while I was gone, so that's good, right? I kept thinking about how easily I could have missed it though, if I stayed out a little longer that day or turned the camera a few degrees to the left. I might have come back to a wiped laptop, empty cash stash, and a gaslit conversation with some apologetic stranger claiming, "Oh wow, you must have just misplaced it." I don't know what would have happened if I caught him at the wrong moment either, if I hadn't kept my voice steady, if he decided that I was just another mark. I still use Airbnb. I'm not stupid. I know most of the hosts aren't like that. The company made it right and they didn't even dodge the damage. But now I photograph everything, I mark all my bills, and I never ever leave without locking every entry point and double checking it on my way out. This was back when Airbnb was still raw, before cleaning fees into hidden cameras, when most listings were just extra rooms inside somebody's house. I was backpacking across Europe, trying to see as much of it as I could before reality would reel me back in. Hostels were cheap, sure, but I'd already had my fill of snoring strangers and bedbug rumors, so I started booking spare bedrooms on Airbnb. Locals offering up their flats, usually a guest room or a fold-out couch. It felt more grounded, like you were borrowing space from somebody who'd pour you a glass of wine and show you the good bakery, not just a front desk clerk handing over a key. I was in France when this happened, some small town in the northern half. Honestly, I don't even remember the name. I wasn't being choosy. I'd take a train as far as my budget would stretch, find a town with character, stay a night or two, and then move on. This one had cobblestone streets, crooked little alleys, and not a single word of English on any street signs. That's how I knew it was going to be good. The listing was for chambre privée dans maison familiale, a private room in a family home. A couple who owned the place had emailed me once or twice in broken English. Their photos looked warm and inviting. The woman, Elise, was in most of them. Middle-aged, blonde, red lipstick, even when she was in the kitchen. The man, Jacques, looked quieter, softer, and had glasses and a thinning hairline. They confirmed everything with a thumbs-up emoji and said they'd be home by 4. I spent most of that day walking the town, the cathedral, local shops, this weird flea market where I bought rusted corkscrews for absolutely no reason. I checked in around 5. Their place was tucked behind a bakery, down this narrow alley. 2 stories, shutters on the windows, ivy climbing the wall. Jacques opened up the door and welcomed me like I was his nephew. Elise kissed both cheeks and then handed me a glass of wine before I'd even set my bag down. The place smelled like butter and lavender. It felt authentic, cozy, real. At the time, I thought I'd stumbled upon one of those golden experiences travelers always brag about. But I was wrong. The room was simple. Wooden floors, a twin bed, a little desk with a lamp, and a window that opened up toward the alley. No locks on the doors, which kind of struck me as odd, but I figured this was one of those trust-based countries. A handwritten note on the nightstand said, Buena vie. Please join us for aperitif at 6, with a little smiley face next to it. I washed up, changed my shirt, and came out right at 6. The living room smelled even stronger now. Cheese, fresh baguettes, maybe some kind of cured meat as well. 𝐸𝐿 was pouring wine into huge glasses, and Elise was lighting candles on the table like she was prepping for a date of her own. "You like rosé?" she asked. Her English was heavily accented, but clear enough. "We only open this for special guests." 𝐸𝐿 smiled at that but didn't say much. We sat around the table and started drinking. I remember thinking how much better this was than some sticky hostel lounge. They laid out this giant spread: brie, roquefort, salami, prosciutto, little slices of apples and strawberries. Elise continued to refill my glass constantly, clinking hers against mine and laughing the whole time. 𝐸𝐿 seemed to drink slower but still kept pace, his eyes bouncing between the two of us. The conversation was normal at first. Where'd I been, where I was headed, how long I planned to travel. But as the wine kept coming, Elise got looser. She started asking much more personal questions. Do I have a girlfriend? Was I lonely traveling all by myself? Did American women really look like the girls on Friends? At first I found it funny. I laughed it off, but somewhere around the 3rd or 4th glass, the tone had now shifted. She leaned a lot closer when she spoke. Her hand brushed mine more than once. Her blouse was loose, and it started to slide off on one shoulder. Rau. She poured her next glass sloppily, dribbling pink wine down her wrist and then licked it up like it was nothing. 𝐸𝐿 was watching all of this, silent, his smile thinning out. "I think I'm gonna turn in soon," I said, half standing. "Oh, don't go yet," Elise pouted. "It's only getting interesting." "I'm pretty tired." She scowled at me for just a moment, then smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. I stood fully, took a step back from the table, and that's when it all fell apart. "What is it?" she snapped. "Do you not like French women?" No, I just... "Is it because I'm old?" She barked at me. Standing up so fast her chair screeched behind her. "You think you're too good for me, huh, American boy?" "Elise," 𝐸𝐿 said gently. "Shut up," she yelled, rounding the table. I backed up with my hands raised, trying to calm the situation down, but she came at me fast, wild-eyed and snarling, and whacked me across the head with her high heel. I stumbled back and caught the wall. The point of the heel caught me just behind the ear, not enough to bleed, but sharp enough to make me reel back. "Elise!" 𝐸𝐿 shouted, grabbing her shoulder. But she kept trying to claw at me, screaming in a mix of French and English. Something about Americans, about how we think we're better than everybody, about how I was just a boy playing at being a man. 𝐸𝐿 pulled her back, trying to hold her arms down, but she thrashed and nearly knocked over the table. "Go!" 𝐸𝐿 yelled at me. "Just pack up and just go. You need to go." I didn't argue. I went straight to the room, half drunk, heart hammering, and started shoving everything I owned into my bag. I wasn't even thinking about where I'd go, I just couldn't stay here. Outside the door, I could hear her sobbing, then shouting, then something crashing, glass, maybe a plate. I zipped up my bag and opened up the door. 𝐸𝐿 stood in the hall, red-faced and sweating. He didn't say anything, just moved aside to let me pass. Elise was in the kitchen, wine-soaked and slumped in a chair, and she hissed when she saw me. "You're trash," she spat at me. "Trash tourist. I hope the police find you." I just kept walking. I stepped outside the front door and something wet hit my back. I turned and she'd thrown her wine glass at me. It bounced off the door frame and shattered in the alley. 𝐸𝐿 pulled her back again, muttering something like, "Enough, enough." I kept going though, and the door slammed behind me. Now I was alone, drunk, and completely without a place to sleep. It was nearly midnight. The town was dead quiet except for the occasional hum of a scooter or the rattling of a passing train. I had no plan, no backup, just the weight of my pack and a buzzing paranoia that made me check over my shoulder. That police thing had stuck in my head though. She said it like she wanted them to come after me. Had she already made up some kind of story? Was I going to be wandering around some foreign town only to get nabbed by the police for assaulting her or something? I ducked into a side street and stayed there for a few minutes, crouched low just watching. Nothing happened, no sirens, no shouting, but still, I felt like I was being hunted. I made my way into the city center, the plaza, the clock tower, and stone benches. There was one place that still had lights on, a hostel tucked between a pastry shop and what looked like some kind of used bookstore. The desk clerk barely even looked up when I came in, and I asked if they had any beds. He pointed at a clipboard. I signed it, paid in cash, and got a key for the top bunk in room 6. There were 4 people already asleep in there, and I didn't bother changing my clothes, just climbed up and laid there in the dark. Every creak in the building sounding like a footstep coming right for me. I didn't sleep much. I left just after sunrise, before the other travelers could even stir. My pack wasn't fully zipped and my shoes were still damp from the night air, but I didn't care. I wanted out of that town. I didn't even stop for coffee, just made a beeline for the train station with my hood up and my eyes down, half expecting to see a police car pull up beside me at any second. But thankfully, nothing happened. No sirens, no glares, nobody called my name, nobody stopped me at the station. I bought a one-way ticket to the next major stop in the direction of Belgium and didn't look back. When I boarded, the cabin was nearly empty. I sat by the window and watched the town vanish into the trees. I guess part of me wanted to believe that maybe I overreacted, that Elise had just had far too much to drink and Jacques was in over his head with a woman who clearly had a switchblade for a temper. But the other part of me, the one that had been sober enough to feel how fast things went sideways, knew a lot better. That kind of rage just doesn't come out of nowhere. That kind of threat doesn't dissolve just because you walk out the door. I don't know if she ever called the cops or if Jacques talked her down after I left. I don't know if I dodged something worse by 30 seconds or if I'd just been a convenient lightning rod for a woman used to burning everything around her. What I do know is this though, I never booked another Airbnb for the rest of that trip. Not in Spain, not in Germany, not even when I got to the Netherlands, where everything seemed to be like a postcard. I stuck to hostels, loud, gross, and personal hostels. I'd take the bunk above a snoring Australian over a shared wine glass with strangers any day. People talk about those authentic experiences when they travel. They say you should get out of your comfort zone, lean into the culture, say yes more than you say no. But that night taught me something else. I think sometimes comfort zones exist for a good reason. It was one of those weekends that lined up just right, rare as a blue moon. Both of us, me and Riley, had a Friday night through Monday off, no work, no errands, nothing pulling us in 10 different directions. We weren't planning on anything big, but when I saw the block of days open and a decent Airbnb pop up just a few hours away, we booked it without thinking too hard. That was still very early on in the stretch of our relationship, when impulse stuff felt like magic. Everything was new. Every plan was exciting. You just wanted to be next to each other, no matter where that was. The place was just over the state line, a little town near a river with a long name that I couldn't pronounce and didn't even try to. A bunch of antique stores, local breweries, a lake that was more like a big pond, and hiking trails that we had no intention of using. I picked that Airbnb because it looked like something out of a furniture catalog, clean, bright, and modern. The photos showed a wide open floor plan, a clawfoot tub in the bathroom, one of those long wooden dining tables you never actually use. It had this cozy look to it, and Riley's eyes lit up when I showed it to her. All she said was, "Let's go." We hit the road Friday morning, coffee in hand and bags tossed into the trunk. It took us 3.5 hours to get there. The check-in instructions were easy enough. Keypad lock, 4-digit code, and then the door swung open without a hitch. The second we stepped inside, Riley said, "Babe, this place is gorgeous." And she wasn't wrong. It smelled like pine cleaner and candle wax, like somebody had just vacuumed and lit a fresh wick. Everything was spotless. The windows let in this big, soft light that made the whole place glow. It literally felt brand new, even though it probably wasn't. We dumped our stuff in the bedroom and did that classic couple walkthrough, oohing and awing over dumb things like throw pillows and little jars of oatmeal the host had left on the counter. It had that energy of a fresh start, like nobody had ever stayed there before, and we were the first ones to christen it. It felt like ours for the weekend. There's nothing off, nothing weird, no weird smells, no creaking in the floors, no creepy dolls in the closet. Just a nice house in a sleepy town, a getaway, a full reset for us. I had no reason to think that the most disgusting night of my life was only a few hours away. We dropped our stuff off and then hit the town, walked hand in hand down that main strip, popping into shops with handmade signs and dusty old displays. Riley tried on rings at some little boutique that smelled like incense and cat hair. I bought a stupid wooden spoon that I didn't need just to support the guy who carved it. We hit a tap room around 3 and shared a flight of local beers, laughing at the one that tasted like battery acid. Just being together, that was the whole point, right? Dinner was unreal. We found the steakhouse tucked in the corner of a strip center that looked like it hadn't been renovated since 1997. You'd never expect it to be this good, but inside, white linen, polished silverware, and one of those menus that has a few things on it but you know they're all killer. Escargot, garlic bread, wedge salad, soup, steak, and lobster, creme brulee to split it off. Riley toasted her wine glass against mine and said, "This might be the best date of my life." I felt the same way, stuffed and smitten. We Ubered back tipsy and giddy, and were already pawing at each other in the driveway. The wine continued to flow once we got inside, and we made our way to the bedroom like we were the only two people in the world. It was perfect. That kind of intimacy when you're totally locked in. No nerves, no distance, just skin on skin and warm laughter under the sheets. I fell asleep with her hand in mine, her breath slow against my shoulder, and I remember thinking to myself, yeah, I could do this forever. I think it was around 3 or 4 in the morning when I woke up needing to piss. I tried to slip out of bed without waking her. The house was dead quiet. I padded barefoot down the hall, still half asleep, and right away, I felt something wrong. The floor was weird. Not wet, not sticky, but soft. Like the carpet had a layer underneath it that had shifted slightly under each step. I stopped, flexing against the pile, and sniffed. Something reeked, like sweet rot, like meat left in the sun. I squinted into the dark. No sound, just the house breathing around me. I reached the bathroom and turned the light on. I did my business and tried to shake off that queasy feeling rising up in my gut. When I turned to wash my hands, I caught sight of the hallway and the mirror behind me. The floor was moving. At first it looked like static, just a rippling effect in the low light, but when I stepped out and knelt down for a closer look, my stomach lurched. Maggots, thousands of them, writhing in this thick, slow-moving trail that led from the base of the garage door, across the hall and then toward the kitchen. They were clumped like wet rice, squirming in and over each other, making the carpet buckle and writhe under the weight. I gagged, stumbled back. My bare foot had been stuck to it. I wiped them off the tile, trying not to throw up in the process, and then I ran back to the bedroom. "Riley, babe, you gotta wake up now." She groaned and rolled over. "What time is it?" "I don't know, just wake up, seriously." Her eyes blinked open and I pulled her up by the shoulders. "Something's wrong, there's maggots in the house." And that woke her up. We both stood in the hallway wearing nothing but underwear in horror. She clapped a hand over her mouth. "What the fuck?" "They're coming from under the garage door," I said. "I don't know how, I don't know why, but it reeks. Something is dead in there." "Jesus Christ," she whispered. We ran back to the bedroom, yanked on jeans and shoes, and threw shirts over our heads without bothering to match. Riley grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. I armed myself with a broom by the fridge. "I gotta see what it is," I said to her. "Are you serious?" I know it doesn't make sense, but I need to know." She didn't argue with me. We turned on every light as we passed, following the trail. The smell got worse with every step, a thick putrid stench that clung to the back of your throat. I used the broom handle to nudge the garage door open. It groaned as it lifted a few inches, enough for more maggots to spill through like water from a dam. I reached inside and flipped the light on. Riley gasped and I dropped the broom. In the middle of the garage, piled up in a corner like garbage, were 3 dead animals. 2 raccoons, bloated and rotting, their fur sloughing off in patches. One of them had a paw frozen mid-reach, stiff and mummified. Next to them was a dog, medium-sized, golden coat, flies buzzing around its blackened eyes. The mouth was open in this silent, permanent scream. The floor around them was soaked with decomposition fluid, the source of the stench, the breeding ground for all those maggots. "I think they got in and then couldn't get out," I said, covering my nose. "Why wouldn't anybody clean this up?" Riley responded. "Why would the host leave like this?" I don't know. Why didn't we smell this before?" And that question stopped me right in my tracks. She was right. How did the stench not show up earlier? If those animals had been in there for more than a day or two, that smell would have been pouring through the vents. I looked again. The bodies weren't lying naturally. They were in this rough semicircle. One of the raccoons had a piece of red twine tied around its neck. There was this weird scorch mark on the concrete too, black ash in a spiral. I didn't say anything as I looked. Riley pulled me back toward the door. "We need to call someone." "I already tried," I said. "No response from the company. It's the middle of the night." She was shaking. "We can't stay here." I nodded, but we had no idea where else to go. We sealed off the garage the best we could. I shoveled towards the door frame and pushed a chair up against it like that would matter, and stuffed the vents in the laundry room with pillowcases. Then we stepped outside, barefoot in the driveway, and opened the garage from the outside. The overhead door groaned up slowly. Then came with it a new wave of stink, thick and rotten. Maggots then spilled onto the concrete like soap suds from a busted washer. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It just felt like it was better to let the filth go out and not further inside the house. We grabbed all our stuff, every last item, and loaded the car. I stripped the sheets off the bed in case anything had crawled into them. Riley pulled her hoodie on tight and muttered that she still felt like they were on her skin, even though we never stepped foot inside the garage. I think we were in the shower for over an hour, hot as we could take it. Steam filled the little bathroom, fogged the mirror, and scolded the ghosts off us. I scrubbed like I was trying to remove a layer of my skin. Riley didn't talk much. She just stared at the wall and cried softly, water running down her cheeks like it didn't belong there. At around 6 a.m., I finally got a call back, but not from Airbnb. It was the owner.
"Hey,"
he said, tired and groggy.
"I got a message about something going on in the house."
I explained everything to him, the maggots, the animals, the stench. There was this long pause on the other end, and then he said,
That don't make any sense. I don't know how anything would have gotten in there. I was just in the garage last weekend. It was perfectly clean."
We didn't argue because there wasn't a point. When he arrived later that morning, Riley refused to go back inside. I followed him into the garage more out of morbid curiosity than anything else. He froze when he saw the bodies, then he noticed the twine, the ash in that semicircle. At first, he didn't say anything. Then he muttered, almost to himself more than anybody, "Why does this look kind of like a ritual?" I don't know what I really told myself after this. I said maybe he was wrong, told myself that we were just in the wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. But we boogied the fuck out of there after that and wanted nothing to do with the owner's wild theories that came afterwards. In our minds, some animals got stuck in the garage, couldn't get out, died, and decomposed. That's all. No kind of seance, no ritual, because I can't bear the thought.